Hello everyone, I'm Armela and in this video we're going to explain modules in Python. Okay, here is an outline of what we're going to discuss in this video. First, we will learn the concept of modular programming, why we need it and how can we modularize our code. Then we will specifically take a look into Python modules. We will learn to create our own modules and in the end, we will see some of the Python's built-in modules. So let's go. First, what do we mean by modular programming? Modular programming refers to the process of breaking a large programming task into smaller, more manageable subtasks. And these subtasks can be merged together to create a larger application. So they serve just like the building blocks of this application. Well, all of this may seem familiar to you. Well, this is because the building blocks of modular programming are basically functions, modules, and packages. You're already familiar with functions. You know how to create and how to use them. And right now, we will take a look into modules. Okay, here are some advantages of modular programming. And these advantages we've already discussed when talking about functions. But now, let's take a look at them again so that we can understand things better. The first advantage of modular programming is simplicity. Because rather than focusing on the entire problem, a module will focus only on just a portion of the problem. And this will make our program easier to test, it will make it easier to implement, and easier to design. Now, another advantage is reusability. What do we mean by reusability? This means that we can write our code once, and then we can access it whenever we want. Next, we have readability, which is really important when we are writing our own programs. Modular code is highly organized, so this means that it is easier for a programmer and for other programmers to understand what's going on inside of the code if we're using the modular approach. And last but not least, we have collaboration. What do we mean by collaboration? Well, programmers in a team can focus on individual parts of the same code so they can work together to build the same program while completing different tasks. And all of this due to modular programming. Okay, now that we understood why modular programming is beneficial, let's go on and talk about modules. What is a module in Python? Basically, modules in Python are simply Python files which have a .py extension. In these files, we can include functions, we can include classes, we can include variables, lists, dictionaries, etc., as long as they're defined and implemented. So you can consider the module to be the same as a code library or a file which contains all the functions that you want to include in your application, okay? For example, when we're building a game, it can use several modules. One module will be responsible for the game logic, another module can be responsible for the animations, for the sound, etc. So each module is a different file which can be edited separately, okay? Now, there are two types of modules. We have built-in modules and we have user-defined modules. Built-in modules, from the name, are modules that exist in Python and we can use them whenever it's necessary, so they are already written. And user-defined modules are basically modules that we create ourselves, just like we're going to do now in an example. Just let me switch to REPL.it. Okay, here we're going to create our very first module in Python. As we said, a module is a Python file. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a file. Let's just press add file in here, and I want to create a module which will contain the needed functions to perform the basic mathematical calculations. Therefore, I'm going to name my module calculator. So I'm going to create a module calculator, which will contain functions related to adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing numbers, etc. So let's call it calculator. And then we need the .py extension because this is a Python file. Okay, now that we have our file open, we can go on and create our functions. First, we need a function which will add two numbers. So I'm going to call it sum, and then it will take as inputs a and b, and will return the sum of a and b. Okay, just a quick note. I'm keeping things really simple just to show you the way in which we can create and use modules. And remember that we can do all sorts of things inside our modules. We can write more complex functions, but this is just an introductory example, okay? Now, we can define another function which will be the subtract function. It will take a and b, and then it will return a minus b. Then we can create another function which will be, it will multiply a with b. It will return a times b. Another function which will be div. It will basically divide a by b. And another function which will calculate the factorial, for example. I don't know if you are already familiar with what a factorial is, but basically a factorial is just a number which has this exclamation mark. And what a factorial means is that it means the multiplication of all the numbers starting from 1 up to the number itself. So for 4 is basically 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. Now, how can we calculate this? We just need a for loop. Let's call it factorial. And let's put n inside the parentheses. Now we need a variable f, which will be initialized to 1. And in the for loop, what we are going to do, we're going to loop from for I starting from 1 up till n plus 1. Why n plus 1? Because we need the last character n to be included into our multiplication, okay? So for I in range, we will start from 1. We cannot start from 0 since then the result will always be 0 since it is multiplication. And then we will multiply f with I. In the end, we will return f. Okay, now these are the functions that I have included into my module. Now, how can I use this module? First of all, let's go to the main file. So in order to use our module in other files, we need to import it. There are a couple of different ways in which we can import our modules. We need to use the import keyword. Usually, the import statements will go at the beginning of our code, but actually there is no restriction as long as they come before the code that will use our module. Now, the first way in which we can import our module is by doing like this. So import, and then we specify the name of our module, which is calculator in this case. Now, how can we access a method which is inside calculator? Well, we just say calculator, so the name of the module that we imported, and then we press a dot, and then the name of the function that we are going to use. And then we press two parameters, for example, 3 and 4. And since this function is returning a value, I'm just going to put it inside a print function just to see the value that it's returning. And we can also see how the other functions are performing. Just let me change this to sub, and in here we can have mul. And in the end, factorial. But factorial will be factorial of only a number. Let's use 5, for example, and the factorial of 5 is 120, so let's check by running. Okay, basically 3 plus 4 is 7. All the results are correct. Now, another way in which we can import modules is by using the s keyword. So what we are doing in here is we are giving another name to our module. See, in this case, this module has a really long name, and it's actually a bit tiring, or it's not convenient to write this long name all the time when we need to use a function from this module. So basically in here we are importing calculator as C. So only by typing this letter instead of calculator, we do the same thing as we did before. So let me just remove this just to see how this will work. If we run this, we will get the result. Now, another way in which we can import modules is by importing only some functions from it. So from calculator, import sum, import mul, and import sub. Now basically, we are importing only these functions. And now, in order to call the functions, we don't have to specify C or calculator anymore. We just can say sum. We can use directly the function like this. Now, this is giving a green sign because we haven't used mul, but if we remove mul, for example, everything is okay. Now, if we run this, we will see that the results are okay. And the last way in which we can import modules are by using the asterisk sign. What will the asterisk sign do? Basically, we're saying import everything from calculator. So we will import all the functions from our module. And in this case, if we run this again, the result will be the same. Okay, so basically this is the way in which you can create your own module and use them. Easy, right? You just have to have a clear view in mind of what is the purpose of your module and how it's going to be structured. Now that we created our own modules and learned how to import and how to use these modules, I want to show you something. As we said, Python comes with hundreds of modules that do all sorts of things. These type of modules are called built-in modules. They are already implemented and we can import them in the same way as we did with our user-defined modules, so by using the import statement in all its cases. You are already familiar with Turtle? Well, Turtle is a built-in module. Now, let's see where we can find a list of all the available built-in modules in Python. If we go into Google and we type in Python 3 modules, and we click this link right here, in this webpage, we have documentation about all the available built-in modules in Python. And this is really great because for each module, we have a detailed description of what it serves for and what is included. For example, we can try and see a module. Let's see the module time. In here, we can see that we have the detailed description of the time module. And in here, we have all the functions that are included in this module. We can just try and use one of them. Let's use this function in here to see what it does. If we go into the REPL.it, in order to run the function time, we should import time. Then we should call our function, which is local time. We can store the result into t, a variable, and let's print this t. In here, we can see the result, which is basically the year, the month, the day, etc. So in this way, we can access all of the Python's built-in modules. I will leave it to you to try and learn more about some of them. For example, you can learn more about time, calendar, turtle, or whatever you like. This is it for this video. Thank you so much for your attention.